Hey guys, and welcome back to the Armchair Dragoons Digital Convention. Other ideas for it, but someone's got some feedback there, and this is the happy hour, the end of the convention show. And I hope you guys are have enjoyed the weekend. And joining me is Brant Guillory from the Armchair Dragoons, as well as Ardwolf himself has joined in, and we're going to have a little, just a little chat about things. We were talking about some stuff backstage. Maybe we'll talk about that as well, but we'll continue on maybe a little bit of the talk about the Armchair Dragoons Awards that started on Friday, and we have already taken the bottle away from Gary, so he can't get drunk. So,
yeah, that's true. No, I'm still in recovery from Friday, actually.
So, how did you guys think of the con? What did you guys all think of the con so far? Well, not so far. It's over at this point. But
I thought it went great. What happened again?
We still have an event or two happening.
Yeah.
I think it was fine right up until my power went out.
Yeah. That happens.
Yeah. Fortunately, StreamYard kept Chris going for his Starship Troopers talk, and Merle was able to step in and take over producer duties. That was good. And so it all worked out. I think it's gone well. I think we ended up having a couple of we lost a couple of events due to some family issues. We had one GM that had a death in the family.
Yeah.
We had another one that had another emergency pop up. So we lost a couple of events out of that. But I think a lot of folks really did a good job of kind of adjusting to the circumstances and picking up a game here and there, kind of an ad hoc thing here or there. The other thing, this was the first time we had the International Kriegspiel Society show up and do something with us. And Marshall and the boys got up way too damn early for the fact that they're on the West Coast. Start this thing. Seriously, they started like 6 a.m. their time.
Wow.
But they had 10 players in there, and every one of them had a blast. And one of them has already edited together kind of an AAR video and put it out there on Facebook. It's great.
Awesome.
Yeah,
that's really cool. What about you, Gary? Did you, after you have got the initial recovery going, what did you think?
I had the interview with George from Dark City Games yesterday, where we had some technical issues, but I thought the interview went very well. I thought we gave George some well-deserved exposure, so I'm pretty happy with that.
Excellent. And I had the interview with Bruce Maxwell, got to talk with him again about Aaron Armour. And then we just had David Heath on from Lock and Load Publishing, talking about all their, tabletop and digital stuff. And then also talked to Stuart Tong over 2 minutes to midnight. And then we touched a little bit on Blue Water Navy that he's got, as well as Blue Water Navy Pacific that's coming out. So I think there's been a good cross-section of information and talk shows and seminars. I know Tomislav Chipchich is here. He did a thing about Op Corridor, and then also taught Brotherhood and Unity. How did everybody in the audience that's here, everybody here, sound off and tell us what you thought about the convention and what were the highlights for you? And we'll add those up on the screen as we go along. But I think overall it's another good con, and I think these digital conventions are here to stay.
Yeah, I agree. I think we talked about that a little bit on Friday as well. The virtual convention is not going away, even once we're back to full slates of in-person events, which is, still not happening anyway. So maybe next year we'll have a normal convention calendar. But even then, we're still going to see virtual events. They're just so attractive.
Yeah, that came up this morning in the sort of wargaming wake up conversation we had, which a couple of the guys were dialing in from Europe, so it was lunchtime for them. But we were talking about what's the future for these things look like for us. And one of the things for us, so this kind of summer weekend is going to be a little tougher for the Dragoons to pull off, only because we're normally going to be hanging out with Gary at Origins. And so that's what would have been this weekend if Origins had stayed on schedule. I do think that the Dragoons are going to stick with at least one virtual convention a year, probably in a winter window somewhere. This past year, we did one over MLK weekend. That seemed to work out really well. People seem to like that weekend to work with. And that's a good one to be able to use, because if we push too late, we get too close to PresCon. And PresCon is not a huge convention, but it is a fairly wargame heavy convention up in Charlottesville. Yeah. And we don't want to step on those guys if we can help it. So I don't mind stepping on somebody's RPG convention over MLK weekend, but but I'm going to try not to step on the other wargamers if we can help it.
So
that
bear in mind that
for
Winter Offensive, MMP's Winter Offensive is typically MLK weekend as well.
Yeah, but it's MMP. I mean,
Well, that's true. It's 65, 70% ASL.
Yeah.
And another 25% is Great Campaigns, the American Civil War. So as long as you're not encroaching on those two particular games very much, it's kind of okay.
Yeah. We'll figure something out.
Chris says he caught most of it on catch up due to the time difference in England, but enjoyed what he saw so far with the global hotspots update with NSDM and the great interviews with me and Ardwolf. So yeah, thanks a lot for tuning into those, Chris. Really appreciate your watching them and glad you enjoyed them. I
haven't watched it yet, but Bruce is a terrific interview. And if he is half as enthusiastic about Aaron Armour as he was about NATO, and he's not, he's twice as enthusiastic about Aaron Armour as he was about NATO, then I'm sure that is going to be an awesome watch. So
yeah, it's
queued up for later.
It's a beast of a rule book, and it's the coolest thing. One of the coolest things I think about Aaron Armour is the fact that now, aside from all the updates he did and stuff like that to the Order of Battle and things, is now there's a solitaire module. So the cool thing about solo module is, and it works really, really well. You can play it like we can play. Any of us can have the game, and once we know the game, you can play it solitaire. Or all three of us could be together and say, "Hey, let's play a game against the bot, not the bot, but against the AI." So you can literally play a cooperative game, or you can flesh out any of the other units or any of the other factions or whatever, how you want to break it down with the AI. So I think that's kind of neat. So you can say, hey, I've got control of this, I got control of that, or you got control of this, and the AI is going to do this section over here. And you know what? That commander is an idiot. That commander doesn't always listen to us, so we don't know what's going to happen over there. Well, I think Gary hit the wrong button.
Uh-oh.
We had that happen earlier.
He's not even drunk yet. Hey, while Gary is off screen, I have something I need to share here real quick. No. This is a photo from an Origins long gone. So if we can pull this picture up real quick. So this picture is from Origins in 2007. I'm sorry. Yeah, 2007. That's Janice Walker, Mark's wife, back when Lock and Load was a new company. She's now obviously working with Mark at Flying Pig and Tiny Battles. And that was me in the Bayonet Games booth. That is my son right there. From when he came down to the convention center to, my wife brought him down there, was hanging out for a little bit. So the thing about this, that shirt that I'm wearing in there, that Life is Good on the kayak shirt, this is the only one of the pictures that I could find, because I thought about it kind of at the last minute on short notice. There are pictures of me and my son with me in this exact same shirt from like 7 different Origins over the years.
I may have missed something.
There's one from when he's 10. There's one from like 3 years ago when he's 16. My son just graduated high school last week.
That was my question.
Yeah.
Because I knew that.
Yeah.
And you're old.
You've met my son. I mean, he
I know.
In the Lock and Load booth there for a couple of years. He's not a little kid anymore.
Nope.
But it was, I figured this is Origins weekend. I had to dig out the shirt. This shirt is, the collar is literally falling apart. I save it for Origins weekend at this point. It's become a bit of a tradition. I had to dig it out and share the one picture I could find of me and my son with me in this shirt. So
that's awesome.
Thank you. Appreciate you letting me share it. We can ditch that now.
There we go. Now that's pretty cool.
That's where that came from. So is the man in the back? No, that was not Gary. I don't think. I'm saying that without having actually.
I don't think so.
I'm opening.
I would have been at that Origins, but I don't think so.
No,
bring it back up. Let's share.
That is not you in the background. That's some dude like in a wheelchair or something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, hang on. I'm pulling it back up.
It wasn't
Gary could have used the wheelchair to get in for free or something like that.
There we go. I've got the picture on the side monitor over here. So no, none of those are Gary.
The 07 is who you're referring to, I think, right?
That's not Gary.
I have never worn an athletic jersey. Well, since high school, anyway.
That's funny.
Nope.
So
definitely not Gary.
So Carl's saying they just finished the Napoleon 1807 demo, and I hope that went well.
Yeah. Yeah, Carl. So when we were putting together GMs for this, I reached out to Carl and Tim, said, "Hey, you guys interested in doing the board game boot camp again?" They said, "Yeah, sure." And Carl said, "I can GM some other stuff too." And I'm like, "All right, fine. What did you have in mind?" And he sends me this list of like 9 things. I'm like, "Am I supposed to pick and choose?" He said, No. Put them all on the schedule. Are you nuts? Yeah, well, yeah, but go ahead and put them all on the schedule. Okay.
Carl's a machine.
I know. Tim sends me one.
Yeah.
Carl, that's like, I think it ended up being like 7 of them, that Carl sends me, and Tim sends me one. And the one Tim originally sent was Brotherhood and Unity, and then once we got Tomas signed on, Tim changed out of Brotherhood and Unity to something else.
Yeah. It's like, well, I could teach the game, but you know what? It's even better if the guy who designed the game teaches the game. I think he knows it a fair bit better than I do.
Yeah. Gary, I'm not at the store. I've got an actual beverage tonight.
So that's good. I do too, but it's gone and it's Mountain Dew anyway. So.
And it went well. Carl was awesome. Napoleon 1807 is a great game. And Carl agreed. He said everything went well. So that's always great to hear from the con goers as well as from the GMs as well. But going back to what we were saying before, Gary hit the big red X and dumped himself out.
Right. So that's exactly what happened too. Whoops.
the giant "do not push this button" and Gary pushed it.
Well, he's used to seeing the easy button. Is this the easy button? So we were talking about. Exactly. We were talking about, having these conventions, and not just the Armchair Dragoons, but also any digital convention. I think the best times to hit those conventions are the dead spots for wargame conventions throughout the year, because then you can fill in that little gap. So that way people who are, planning on going next year, hopefully everything will be back to normal. And I think it will be, where people are going to more wargame conventions on a regular basis. They can still do these in the interim. And on top of that, the other great thing about it is the people who can make it to the conventions, they can't go to Origins, can't go to CSW, things like that. They can at least do these, especially the people who are overseas. They can still get together and do these little digital conventions.
Yeah, the people who are overseas, I get. The rest of you that, aren't making it to Origins or CSW or Compass Con or whatever, I just think you need to reevaluate your life choices. That's really what that's a sign from the cosmos about. So, we talked about this a little bit on Friday with Gary. We talked a little bit about it this morning during the Wargaming Wake Up. And ultimately, I think what the Dragoons are tentatively committing to are 2 things. One, we're going to have at least one virtual game convention each year. More than one if it makes sense, but at least one. The other thing we're going to maintain our involvement with is we were one of the co-sponsors of Connections Online. And both of you guys were involved in that. Gary to a pretty heavy degree, Moe helping with the promotion and the interview in advance of it all. We're going to maintain a presence with Connections Online. Now, how much we continue to get involved with any of the other sister conventions to Connections Online, we'll have to see. Carl, yeah, absolutely. So we're at Origins every year. Beyond that, we have discussed the idea of an in-person Dragoons convention, and part of it is we've learned a lot of how to do this stuff. Not just stealing good ideas from other people, but I mean, we've done the wargaming program at Origins for 6-7 years now. That we've got a decent idea of what we think works for us. Not necessarily what works for everybody else, but what works for us. And really what it comes down to is trying to figure out a time and place to do that most effectively. And that's what we got to figure out. And one of the things that I think is a big deal for conventions, and something we've tried to focus on a little more at Origins, and Gary's seen a lot of these things, is, you can get 2, 3, 4 buddies together on a Saturday afternoon, some stray Saturday afternoon, to play a big game of Lock and Load Tactical. Right. I mean, you get around some folks. Gary's in
or set up half of Case Blue.
Yeah. Gary's in 5 OCS games in any given week. And, it's
only 2, but
only 2. Yeah. So, but the reason you're not in more is because you don't have the time, not because the OCS is not available to you. Right.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. That is seriously why. So outside of Gary's sort of, weirdo alternate dimension there in Columbus with all the hardcore war gamers,
most folks, you can get together a couple of friends and get a bigger game of Lock and Load Tactical over some Saturday afternoon once every month or two, or some other one sitting game, even if it's a 4 or 5 hour game, that
Sure.
once in a while sort of thing. Or maybe you've got a regular Wednesday night standing game night with 2 or 3 friends where you're playing one sitting sorts of things. And that's cool. Do that. Absolutely keep doing that. What we're wanting to try to do more with something like Origins, and what we would want to do more of with a bigger convention if we were going to run our own, are things like the Kriegspiels, the CPXs, team coin games, the big stuff that you need a little more infrastructure to pull off, that you can't pull off just in your dining room because you need 2 tables separated by some distance for the legit fog of war of 2 different sides of the organizations. Or, again, a Kriegspiel, you don't just need a bunch of table space. You need a bunch of table space with the goofy little study carrels that maintain, that block visibility from everybody else. And you need, however many players you have, you need that number of umpires also just to be runners.
Yeah.
That's not the kind of stuff you're going to pull off on a Saturday afternoon with some friends. And so that's
not average. Not on average.
So how do we figure out a way that if we're going to be doing in-person convention stuff, that we make it worth the while of people in the time, the travel, the cost of being there, the facilities that we need to do those things. How do we make all that worthwhile? And that's the challenge we've got to figure out before we start doing more in-person stuff.
Well, I think a good way to do it is to hit the resources you have, which is talk to the people at Digital Convention and put out as part of the post, convention thing, do it like a survey, ask for opinions, even people who may not make it, because they can't for, geographical reasons or whatever. They would still be able to give valuable feedback as far as what would draw them to a convention if they could make it, which they still might, but it's always good to get more information from multiple sources.
I promise I didn't ask Mo to drop in the plug about the feedback survey we're going to be sending out. So that will be going out. That will be going out through the Discord tonight and by email to everybody tomorrow, just to make sure we catch folks. We do have a feedback survey. Those of you that have done several of these conventions with us will recognize a handful of the same questions, in part because we want to sort of track the trend along the way as we go. Are people having more fun or not? And those are the kinds of things we want to ask. Yeah,
exactly. And what would they like to see more of? What do they want to see less of? Things like that, because it's still an evolution. I think the basics are pretty down solid now right now, but there's still other things that people want to do, and want to add, which this was a screwed up weekend for me. Normally I would have been online a lot more, but because I had multiple other things going on. So normally I think one of the big keys is also having like social hours, not just on here, YouTube, but in the Discord where, people can just get together, let the hair down and just talk and have fun and things like that. Because that's one of the things that we all miss from the in-person conventions, is the fact that we can hang out at the bar, have a beer, have some whiskey, whatever, and just sit down around a table and just talk. I think that's cool.
We did those with the Wargaming Wake Up Saturday and Sunday mornings. We do those little 9 a.m. flip on Discord, everybody kind of get together things. They were much more well attended back in January than they were this time. And I think just people had some other things going on. One of the things that did happen this year was we had 10 players in the Kriegspiel at the exact same time the Wargaming Wake Up stuff was going on.
Yeah.
And look, I'm just not getting up an hour earlier to try and do that before Kriegspiel started. I'm just not.
Yeah.
But it was a good time. I mean, we had some good conversations. A couple of the people in the chat were in some of those conversations. So, I mean, they may be able to chime in also. It's nice to just have some casual conversation around those things. So, it's a good time.
Tell me about this conversation you and Gary had the other day about the Armchair Dragoons Awards.
Well, there was much complaining on my part about the very well-trod territory.
It's my shocked face.
Awards at this point.
Yeah, Gary's.
I had Jim on the show, on my Monday show as well, and we probably spent 20 minutes complaining about the Charles S. Roberts Awards as well. So I don't really feel like I need to repeat any of that, because I'm on the record in several places about my feelings as to how that went down.
As a huge fan of U-Boat.
Right. It's awesome, except for the more awesome submarine game that's a better war game.
Captain Sonar.
Show.
Except for the war game. Except for the war game Sonar. Yeah, I mean,
Captain Sonar is more of a war game than U-Boat is.
Captain Sonar is a fantastic game. It is a lot of fun.
It's super fantastic, but it actually puts you in that submarine commander decision space, which U-Boat really doesn't. It's where do I put the worker placement?
Yeah. Well, that and also it makes everybody that's involved, they really do feel like they're an active part of a crew.
Yeah,
because everyone has a job.
There's a map and everything.
Yeah, there really is. And you actually do fire real torpedoes, and people don't say, "I'm sorry, Captain, I will only do two things today."
And the volume is amazing when Captain Sonar is played. It's shouting and it's fantastic. It's so much fun.
It is a really neat game. If you guys have never played Captain Sonar, when you go to a convention, now that things are getting back together, or even pick up a copy of the game, if you got 8 people that you can play with, family gathering or whatever, it's not a complex game at all to play, but it is a fun game. And if you play with the right 8 people, it is a blast.
Mm-hmm. I'm not sure I like 8 people that I would want to be in a game.
It's 4 people to a sub. And
to a site. It's okay to hate 4 of the people. So.
Okay.
And it's a lot. You're directly across from each other, and you're literally listening to what they're doing, and you're using that as intelligence. It's hidden movement with massive hints, because you're hearing what they're doing and you're trying to figure out where are they starting from and where are they going to. I love that. I love plotting the whole thing out because that's what I've done every time I played, and I had a lot of fun with that.
Yeah.
No, that's cool.
It's a lot of fun. It's like flat top with more, but way faster and more shouting.
To get back to the question Mo had asked with regards to the Wargaming Award stuff, not going to rehash the entire discussion we had with Gary's show the other day. You can just go watch that and get the whole thing. The short version is we'd had a plan for some Wargaming Awards that we'd put together a couple of years ago while the Charlies were defunct. And we hit pause on them once we launched the Dragoons because we didn't want to overstretch ourselves in the first year or two of having the Dragoons out there. And we had some other things we wanted to focus on, like getting the podcast up and running. And then about the time we were ready to come out with these awards, the Charlies came back. And so we're all like, okay, this is cool. Let the Charlies do this then. And we don't need to. And then it turned out we need to. And so we've essentially pulled off the same basic plan we had from 4 or 5 years ago and updated it slightly. And that's what we're going to run with. And so what we're doing is we're going to have a panel that's going to put together some initial curation of the games under consideration and check to make sure they were actually released in the year for which we are voting.
Among other things.
Yeah, as a minimum sort of thing. And
they actually have maps.
Well,
right, for the Maps Award.
What we're looking at are
they exist and were released.
We're going to have 4 initial awards when we first start this out. We're going to have a game of the year, just an overall game of the year. We're not going to try to divide by era at all.
Game of the year.
The war game of the year.
Okay, because you have to make sure that you say war game.
It will be the war game of the year. And then we're going to have a best graphic presentation, combination of maps, counters, box art, all those different pieces. We're going to have a best graphics presentation piece. We're going to have a Rookie of the Year award that is going to recognize new blood in the industry, whether it's a new designer, a new artist, a new publisher, new content creator. We're going to work on exactly how we will define those rookies. But we want to recognize people that are new in the hobby and making good contributions. And then the 4th one we're going to do, for which Hungry Hippos will definitely qualify.
Full contact Hungry Hippos.
We're going to do a best traditional war game where, this gets into the whole argument about what
you have to be 65 and over to vote for that one, right?
Yeah. You have to have an AARP card to vote for that one. No, for best traditional war game, we're going to have a set of criteria, hexes, counters, CRTs, whatever, different categories there. And you've got to meet at least like 3 of the 5 categories in order to be eligible for that one. Yeah. So for instance, the coin games probably, up front definitely would not fit into that category. Never mind, it was released 40 years ago. So those are some of the things that we're looking at in how we categorize those. But we're only starting with 4 categories. That's the only thing we're going to do. The panel will figure out what the initial curation list will be. It's kind of like when the Oscars release, here are the nominations for this year. And we are going to have a component of a public vote involved where we have the panel as the primary 5 voters for this. The 6th vote when we are counting these categories will be the public. And we'll allow the public to weigh in on that. So they have a say, but they're not going to have an overwhelming say. This is not a popularity contest. This is not who can get the most number of Kickstarter backers to stuff the ballot box.
Sure.
And they're going to be working from a list that our panel puts together. And I did mention the other night, Gary's on the initial panel. We're going to rotate some folks out throughout the years. We're going to rotate at least one person each year.
I am the complainer in chief.
Yes.
I will be complaining about everything that there is to complain about.
Gary is our grumpy cat.
God damn it! You people are screwing this up again.
His name is now Walter.
God damn it! Don't make me put my pants on.
The fun part of this is Gary's not the oldest dude on the panel either. So.
Oh, bro, I'm sure.
No.
But something we're gonna do. So we're gonna have a 5-person panel, and something we're gonna make sure that we do in those seats on the panel. One seat is always going to be held open for a college kid. We want to make sure we've got the younger generation represented as a part of this and keep them invested in the hobby. Mm-hmm. So one of those seats is always going to be held open for a college kid, whether it's somebody in a war game specific program or environment like the kids at Georgetown at Goose. Again, some of those kids are in their 20s. I still call them kids because they're kids. Yeah, they're closer in age to my son than me. They're kids. Yeah. But whether it's somebody that's specifically studying wargaming or somebody that's studying something else and potentially using wargaming or conflict simulation as a component of their studies, that's fine. We are going to have a seat that we hold for a member of the Dragoons, somebody that's closely affiliated with us. If we're going through all the trouble of sponsoring this, we're going to have a vote on the panel.
And Brant would prefer that be not Brant.
Yes. Everybody would prefer that be not Brant. Brant's got a better track to do. But we are going to have one of the Dragoons as an initial panelist on this. And we'll figure out who will rotate into that seat amongst the Dragoons.
Yeah.
And then we are going to maintain one seat on the panel that's a crossover seat with the professional practitioner world. That will be somebody that's coming in from the DoD, the government agencies, the academic world, that these folks know the hobby game world reasonably well and take a lot of inspiration from it. But they also have a different perspective as well as to what these kinds of games can do beyond just have fun on a Saturday afternoon. And we would like to have that represented as well. So the comment I saw pop up about the World Fantasy Awards jury and public nominate, but jury picks. Actually, it's jury nominates and jury and public pick. The jury will have the jury's going to have 5 of the 6 votes. So the public could potentially swing a vote if it's close amongst the jury. The public may have a deciding vote as to who that winner ends up being. The timing of it all, ideally, we want to be giving these awards out at Origins because that's where most of our folks congregate each year, and we've got a bigger event. And if we can get the award recipients to show up at Origins, we've got the ability to garner some industry recognition while we're there, just because so many folks in the industry are there with us at the time. But it also gives them a chance for a little bigger exposure to the rest of the industry as a part of winning that award. Yeah. What we're not going to do in this, the point Gary very specifically asked the other night, we're not trying to rush one through for Origins 2021 coming up in October. It's just not going to happen that fast. Yeah, so we're looking towards, we're going to start having the panel get together, and the first panel is going to have a little bit of heavy lifting to do because they're going to have to organize some internal processes and procedures for how they want to maintain their deliberations, their lines of communication, for how they want to talk about these things. And look for, after the new year, we'll start putting some information out to the public that, hey, here's our initial nominee list. Here's when the voting is going to be happening. And we want to know the voting and know the key nominees in time to be able to warn folks to make travel arrangements to come to Origins.
Yeah.
So So that's what we're looking at. And again, there were a lot more details released the other day. I don't want to chew up our hour here rehashing it. Y'all
now the question I have is, are you going to have a red carpet there and a red carpet event and an after party and swag bags and everything else?
Brant will wear a startlingly spangly evening dress.
Yes. I have my dress spangled kilt that I can. There
you go.
We may be able to scrounge up a couple of scraps of red felt for people.
Oh, wait a minute. Now, if we're doing kilts, I mean, which one do you want me to wear?
The utility kilt.
So I have one. I have a utility kilt and a Scottish great kilt.
Yeah, the utility kilt, the cargo shorts.
It's a lot less trouble to put on the utility kilt.
So Chris likes the awards. They do sound really good. I agree. I think it's a good thing. And you know, it's nice to have the Charlies back and all, but you know, I think everyone has already expressed kind of similar opinions about it. We'll just have to wait and see how things go this year. But it is nice to have another awards as well. Mm-hmm. So you know, and also something to do with Origins.
Yeah, and look, the Charlies are essentially a popularity contest, and that's fine. Like, go be a popularity contest. Don't pretend you're something more than a popularity contest. But that's what you are. Go be that, and you know, good for you. Like that's what.
And in fairness, the Charles S. Roberts Awards have always been a popular vote, as far as I'm aware.
Sure.
So that's not new. I think the new thing is that it got voted for. You know, we live in a somewhat different ecosystem now with Board Game Geek and Kickstarter mailing lists and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, and even beyond that, I think the ability to it's a lot easier to stuff the ballot box with digital voting than it ever was when you had to get people to fill out a slip of paper, lick an envelope, and put a stamp on it. And so I think the digital voting, you know, so dramatically lowers the barrier to participation that even drive-by votes can make a big deal out of influencing this, instead of people that have to actually sit down and take multiple actions to make their voice heard.
Mm-hmm.
So if there were awards this year, who do you think would be the leading? John, I'd have to
analyze that. I mean, what exactly came out in 2020? I mean, I'd have to check, to be honest. I certainly have some highlights in mind, but
that sounds like a fantastic topic for a Whiskey Charlie show one night, Mo.
And it will be.
Hang on, let me pick that hand up off the floor.
No, that is something that we'll hit up here in the coming weeks. I think we're already talking about doing a show talking about the Charlies this year and our ideas for it. You know, as far as like what we suggest, our kind of dream sheet, I guess you could say.
So Thomas has the note on here about more like an echo chamber, and we are trying hard to avoid that. We that's one of the reasons why, at least initially, I'm not interested in having publishers or more prominent designers involved, because I want to get away from that. And that's one of the reasons why we've made it a point that out of those 5 seats on the panel, you know, one of them is always going to be a college kid. One of them is always going to be somebody who's relatively new to the hobby. And then one of them is always going to be someone from the professional and practitioner realm that might be around the hobby for quite a bit, but is going to bring in a different perspective.
Those folks absolutely have a different perspective than a hobbyist wargamer does. That's absolutely true.
Gary got force fed 3 days of that.
Oh my God.
So ballot stuffing again, Thomas, there's a limit to how much you can stuff the ballot when the entire aggregated public vote only counts for 1/6 of any of the decision making in any particular category, because the panel is going to have the other 5.
Yeah.
So, and look, here's the thing: who is on the panel will be public knowledge. The games under consideration will be public knowledge. We are leaving it up to the individual panelists to decide for themselves whether or not they choose to make their votes public. We're not going to force them to. We're not going to tell them they can't. That's up to them. The bottom line is we're going to be very transparent about our process. Mm-hmm. And it's up to you to decide whether or not you think that's okay. If you don't like the process, fine. Don't like the process. Like there's plenty of other, go start your own awards. If you don't like our process, that's kind of what we did. No bones about that. Like that's fine. We're going to tell you what we've decided to do and why. And if you like it, great. And if you don't, okay. Like I've done plenty of things people didn't like throughout the years.
Yeah. To answer John's question, I love Stellar Horizons, and I I played it as probably as much or close to as much as any 2020 release, and I wouldn't nominate it for a War Game Award just because I don't think it's a war game.
Unless there was maybe if at some point if there was like a science or science fiction or a science/science fiction category or space exploration, then that would go in. Yeah, maybe. But other than that, I agree. It is absolutely not.
And again, great fun though. Kicking this off, we're kicking it off with 4 categories, right? War Game of the Year, Rookie, Graphic Presentation, and Traditional War Game. Will we expand that at some point down the line? Yeah, probably. I could easily see us expanding that within the first 5 years by at least 2 to 3 categories. Are we in a hurry to do that? No, we want to make sure we can get those 4 right before we start trying to do more. Mm-hmm. And so we want to be careful with that. We don't want to overstep our bounds, even if that means we start smaller than other people might like. Yeah. I want to make sure we can sustain what we're trying to do first before we go gonzo beyond that.
One attractive thing here is steering clear of the sort of traditional compartmentalized categories, the period-based categories where you get trapped sometimes. And okay, so we have 5,000 years of history is this one category, and another category is this 6 years in between 1939 and 1945, right? So I mean, avoiding that seems like a really good idea to me, to just take that out of the equation, because otherwise you end up with weird oddities like strange categories that don't make sense, or categories that in certain years where there's no good releases.
Yeah.
And which could happen.
If you look at the way our forums are organized for the wargaming area, we've sorted them by time span, by era. And so we have a pre-gunpowder, we have an age of gunpowder that basically gets you up to sort of the modern world. And our modern world is kind of combustion engine forward. And then we've got a fantasy, sci-fi, futuristic, where Gary wants to put the Cold War goes hot kinds of games.
Right. The alternate history games.
Yeah. And the rest of us are worried about,
I would like to play a wizard in that game.
Yeah. Mark Walker's got a game for you.
I was gonna say the Long Road sounds like it's right up your alley. You could be a tank commander that's also a Lycan, so
a wizard.
Yeah, there you go. So as an initial cut, we did discuss, do we want to do stuff in multiple categories? And we decided to start with no, we're going to keep it as simple as we can. And again, we want to make sure we get it right with the limited palette first before we start expanding it.
Sure. Yeah, so it makes it easier to maintain. The only drawback to, it's good and bad, because it's good because it does make it easier, but it's bad because not bad, but the only negative is when you start getting open or broad like that, then there's room for interpretation from a lot of people, and that's where it gets it can get a little more difficult, and
you're going to have Iron Curtain up against the latest release from Great Campaigns, the American Civil War, up against some ancient.
No, you won't.
Maybe.
No, because their latest release is 2021, and Iron Curtain came out in 2020. I believe.
Okay, sure.
So
you're missing the point.
Pedantic.
Thus, Gary's true contributions to the entire panel are revealed. All right.
Have you also noticed that sometimes the publication date on Board Game Geek is wrong?
No, never noticed that at all.
It's absolutely
got 3 of mine having been published 12 years ago that still haven't been released. So that's more my fault than Board Game Geeks.
Yeah. So you could. Let's say you decided you were going to have an awards show and you're going to have chronological based categories. Yeah. How much discussion would you need to do just to make that decision, right?
Yeah.
How many do you want? Do you want 1, 2, 3, 15? How do you break that down? Then can you support all those categories? So again, I approve of steering clear of that whole thing.
Yeah.
Certainly at first.
Yeah. And again, will we get to them down the line? Yeah, probably. I'm not in a hurry to get there.
Best game about Stalingrad.
The problem is between that Waterloo.
Are there enough Stalingrad games?
We're gonna those 3
probably
support their own category every year.
Yeah.
The trouble with that is that a lot of games on Stalingrad or called Stalingrad don't actually deal with Stalingrad. They deal with the whole operational environment around Stalingrad. I mean, the Avalon Hill Stalingrad was exactly like that. It's kind of half the east front, right? So,
yeah, but what sounds
it's
better,
got Stalingrad
East
in
Front
the
or
middle of the map.
Stalingrad?
well, right.
Yeah, it's going to catch the attention of everyone, so they're going to use Stalingrad.
I mean, didn't the old Avalon Hill Tobruk game? Tobruk was about 6 hexes in the middle of the map.
I think so. I never played that, to be honest.
Yeah.
So
well, I didn't either. I just sort of laughed at the fact that Tobruk was 6 hexes in the middle of this giant map. So
yeah, that's something Avalon Hill, especially like early period Avalon Hill, did quite a bit. Actually, is they pick a title that was appropriate, but was just like a tiny part of what the actual game covered.
Yeah. For me, Stalingrad is a no hex game. You guys go play it. I don't want to.
Yeah. There's been we're talking about the Avalon Hill Stalingrad. There's been videos on that. You could go, if you've never played that, by all means go check it out, and then you can go buy yourself a copy of Stalingrad if you really think it's worth your time.
Yeah.
And I want to say there was at least, I don't remember if it was a YouTube video or just some folks talking about it on a podcast one time that they had played they busted out one of the older Stalingrad games. And it might have been the Avalon Hill one. I don't remember. But essentially, like, zero fighting actually took place in a hex in Stalingrad, the way the game unfolded.
Mm-hmm.
Like, all of the fighting took place somewhere other than in Stalingrad.
Wow.
Which
you need a category for most egregious use of pink somewhere in the game. There would be a winner for 2020. Let me put it that way.
Most purple Prussians.
Yeah, that's true.
Although that was a couple of years ago. So
that's several years ago for that.
And Tom saying Jaws of Victory should have won last year. And
I think that's a 2020 release. Yeah, definitely 2020 release.
And he's a big fan of that, and he's actually working on some, stuff for that, as far as like writing up some stuff with strategy and after action stuff. He's really
now. All we need to do is have them bring us the rest of the East Front in that system, and we'll be all set.
Yeah, that would be very cool. But the good thing about them is they take their time with their games. That's why there's not like 500 releases. So it may happen, but it may not happen for 3, 4, 5 years.
Yeah.
But when it does come out, it'll be really solid, which is fantastic.
Yeah, that game has a really strong. I mean, it's a really strong reputation, and I think it's already sold out. So
yeah,
if you didn't get it, sorry.
New England simulations, they sell pretty fast. So if you hear they got a new game, jump on it, because
if you're remotely interested in it. I think their next game is Ilau, I believe.
We see, every Tuesday I sit down when I'm finalizing the Tuesday Newsday release that I do every week, and I highlight the latest from each of you in those Tuesday Newsday releases. Part of what I'm doing is I open up this one browser window with 80 odd tabs, maybe more, in there. And what I've got is every publisher whose website I can find, I load up. And what I'm looking for is, ideally, I want to see the entire catalog of releases sorted chronologically with the newest on top, because then I can tell what the newest things are that are coming out.
Sure.
Unfortunately, there's a handful of publishers whose, in the 2 years I've been doing this, their websites have not changed at all, right? Clash of Arms has had Wings of the Motherland on the front of their website for 18 months. It has not changed.
The only webpage I've noticed, the only page on their site that I've noticed that has been updated, and not that recently, is the Waterloo, the La Bataille de la whatever it is, Mount St. John. Yeah,
the guys at New England Sims, aside from changing hosting companies, which changed the URL some, that thing hadn't moved in a while. And I'm more than happy to highlight what people have coming out for those Tuesday Newsday articles every week. And again, I do them every week. Like, the first bullet is newly released this week. What did people spit out? And it's, again, look, we're a strategy gaming site. We're not just wargaming. We do talk 4X games. We do talk some RPG stuff. With the Dragoons, wargaming is our bread and butter, but it's not the only thing we pay attention to. So there's times when the new releases include things from like Steve Jackson games, like a new Munchkin thing came out. We're going to have some of those. When we're talking about the Kickstarters for what was newly launched this week, we're going to have some RPG books in there. We're going to have some mini stuff in there. We're going to have a variety of different things. But the first 20 odd tabs that I'm loading up every Tuesday morning to double check everything are GMT, Compass, MMP, Hollandspiel.
Mm-hmm.
It's all the war game companies. And
you're going to have a selection bias happening there too, where your list every week, whatever it is going to be weighted toward the larger companies because they have 2, 3, 4 things coming out every month.
Sure.
Compass has 2 or 3 things a month. GMT has 3 or 5 things a month. MMP probably has a thing or maybe 2 a month, depending on whether it's ASL or not. New England Simulations puts out something every 4 years, something like that.
Yeah.
Clash of Arms probably releases 1 game a year, something like that. So the smaller publishers, just on the basis of volume, are going to kind of seem to be lost in that tide.
Well, that's where you have, that's a great point, and that's where you'd have to probably do something like Legion is another good one. Legion comes out, kind of sporadic.
Yeah, few times a year, 3, 4 games a year, something like that.
Yeah, so Legion and Revolution are 2 of the ones that I load every week, and as soon as something new comes out from those guys, it's right up at the top of the newly released this week. I can't make them release stuff any faster. That's
right. Get on the phone with them and let them have it. Why
like anybody's listening to me?
Damn it, Randy!
We established on Friday nobody's listening to me, Gary.
I guarantee you, Randy's not listening to anybody. So,
but I mean, something like that, you'd have to put at the top because everyone knows all the big publishers what they're putting out.
New headline. Damn it, Randy.
Get with the program, dude. No, but I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, I want to be able to highlight all of those guys as much. And again, I'll see some stray mention on Board Game Geek. Hey, has anybody seen this new game from this publisher nobody's ever heard of? Go pull up the website. It gets added to the bookmarks. And I'm checking it every week because I'm curious what's there, what's coming out from those guys. And Gary, you're right that, you're right in one sense in that somebody like Compass does have a lot of turnover because they've got new stuff coming out every week or so. GMT tends to come in waves. Once a month, GMT puts 3 new games on P500 and gets 3 new games into the warehouse. And so we end up blocking out, GMT gets once a month a bunch of stuff from GMT in each of those 2 categories. And then we ignore them for 3 weeks.
Yeah. Well, that's just because their schedule is monthly for announcements and your schedule is weekly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it feels like Thin Red Line releases a little more often than that, like about 1 a year. But I haven't been tracking it. I could be wrong. Half the stuff is reprints.
Kind of about that, yeah.
I mean, they've only released 4 games ever. So
yeah. The other thing we do include in there is, what's news from the wargaming world, what's on sale from the wargaming world. So if somebody puts stuff on sale, even if they don't have a new release this week, I'm still going to mention them in there. One of the things we call out every week is S&T Press, so Decision Games, but under the S&T Press moniker, puts a back issue of something on sale that week. And so we call out whatever that one is for that week. We call it out and make sure we highlight it. Paradox has new games on sale every single week. We call them out. What's on sale this week? When we talk about what's news in wargaming this week, lots of people like to pick on Avalanche Press for their games, but a lot of their daily content in terms of the historical articles on their website are pretty interesting. Some of them are a lot of fun. And so I want to make sure that we call attention to, hey, here's a cool one from Avalanche Press. Go read this short little article for a historical blurb. But again, I would love for folks like Legion and Revolution to be pushing more games out and maintain the quality only because that meant that they had a broad enough customer base that they could afford to do more. Yeah. And that means that more people are buying stuff from them that allows them to expand their pipeline. That, to me, that's awesome. Like, that would be really cool. I would love to see more publishers get up to that level of volume because it means the hobby's healthier.
Yeah.
Yep. Sacred Oil is going to be a big deal when it comes out.
Yep. And then there's, I think, 5 total in the C3 series that they're working on. They've got
I thought so.
Less than 60 miles and Dogs of War out already, and then they're going to be doing a few more on that.
Yeah, I think that's going to be 5 games. I think.
Yeah.
Well, I don't have those. I have the 1985 ones. So.
Plus the that 6th one that's got the vampires and werewolves and wizards and whatever in it, right?
Long Road.
Yes, and they lifted the tariffs on Scotch. You'll be glad to know, Mo. That is brand new news as of like the last 72 hours.
So sweet. those evil bastards that were doing that to begin with.
Yeah, that was a terrible idea. Worst trade practice ever.
So they're saying that the ordering stuff will be easier for both sides. But yeah, I mean, the other thing too with companies like Legion, for example, they've only got a couple of people that are working in their staff. So that's one of the things that you also have to bear in mind, and we do. And they try to manage as best they can. And
none of them are full time, I don't think.
No. Well, I know him and his wife. I think that's his deal. Randy and his wife. I think
does Randy work Legion full time, or does he have a day job in Legion?
I believe it's his full time job. It may not be. I could be incorrect here. If anybody knows for sure in the audience, definitely chime in.
I don't trust my memory on this topic. So
because Hollandspiel is a full time job for Amabel and Mary.
Yes,
they are full time. There's a half a dozen folks at GMT that are full time. There's 4 or 5 at MMP that are full time, and I think everybody that's full-time at Compass is either it's not even John, because John's got a day job. Everybody at Compass that's full-time is related to Bill.
Well, John, that's his day job. I mean, he works for Compass. So
John is full-time with Compass now?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think it's about the same for Compass.
It's a miracle he still has hair, really.
I think it's about 4 or 5 for Compass. I think it's about 4 or 5 in them.
Yeah,
as well.
I'm going to start the John Krantz hair monitor. Tracker.
At least 2 people are noting Legion's had an announcement they're hiring a producer full time. That is awesome.
Oh, that's great. They need to hire a social media person too.
Yeah.
So that people can find out that there's a company that called Legion War Games that exists and publishes games, because they do a lot of cool stuff that could be getting better traction than it does.
Look, Decision Games has 3 or 4 people that are full timers there. But the full-time folks that are drawing paychecks from war game companies can't be more than 2 dozen.
Yeah.
Something like that.
And the thing is, even a couple of them that probably are treating that as a full-time job, once you factor in the fact that a bunch of those guys are military retirees drawing military pensions, that's probably the war game company is probably not their primary
source of income.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure at least one of the people drawing money from Decision is falls into that category. So
yeah. Mark Walker's in that category, right? Mark Walker was a retired Navy 06, and that's not a state secret. Mark has openly said, "Hey, I spent a bunch of years in the Navy," and Mark is able to work full time on his companies in large part because he's got the Navy retirement income as a backstop, and that's great. Like, he's earned every penny of it. I don't begrudge him a cent of it. That is awesome that he's been able to do that. And in retirement,
it would be awesome to work for Mark and report to Mark, because then I could say, "I'm giving her all she's got, Captain."
Sure, you go with that. But again, it's not a hugely busy hobby in terms of full-time employment, and so if we can get to the point where more folks like Legion are hiring more full-time folks, that's fantastic. Like, I would love to see more than that, because more of that, because that indicates we've got a healthy enough hobby to support those kinds of people. That'd be great.
Yeah. So. No, absolutely. I agree. And hopefully it will. I mean, I know that's one of the things that I want to do when I'm able to punch out from, the regular rat race. I just want to work in war games. So I think it would be great to do that and, kind of help build the community more, help build out, whatever games for whichever publisher. And I think it'd be a lot of fun. So hopefully that will happen in the next, I don't know how many years exactly, but hopefully it'll happen.
Yeah.
But so everybody had a good time, it sounds like, at the convention this year, and everybody will definitely be looking forward to the next one. Any idea as to when the next one would be?
Next month.
There we go. So next month, everyone, Ardwolf will be talking about it.
Next month is Ardwolf Con, and Gary can be in charge of it.
And we have the Ardwolf hair counter. I'm not afraid to shave my head and make it a very dramatic affair.
So, Mo, the short answer is no. The longer answer is hell no. Our next thing that we're focused on is we've got Origins coming up in October, and it's a weird one because where it lands in the calendar, especially during the school year, impacts the availability of a bunch of people that are normally a part of our crew.
Yeah.
So the Dragoons are going to be at Origins. We are going to have some sort of wargaming presence there. I cannot tell you for sure exactly what it's going to look like, other than some of the bigger events that we try to do, we're going to be really pressed to do.
It might be me holding a sign that says War Games.
Inquire with
there you go.
We're going to have some bigger games there, but we're probably not going to have the same level of robust offerings we've had the last couple of years.
Sure.
Just availability of people to help us man our crew.
Yeah.
So right now, the next immediate target is Origins in Columbus in October. Those of you that may have been on the fence about it, we're going to have some wargaming there. Come join us.
Cool.
After that,
January maybe. Yeah.
So November is when Mace is going to roll around out in Charlotte.
Mm-hmm.
And assuming we're not in a coma after Origins, Mace may be our next target, but that's an in-person convention.
Yeah.
So again, our next virtual one might be MLK weekend in January.
Okay. Yeah, I think that would be great. And that would be one to shoot for as well, to kind of stay in line with the one done this year, and maybe do it again next year, and then maybe look sometime elsewhere throughout the year where another one could be, kind of fit in perfectly. Yeah. So that way everybody gets into that mode of when the conventions are. But
yeah, you've got an expectation of. Now, that said, there is no shortage of online games being organized over in the Dragoons forums. Ozarski's got Saturdays and Wednesdays every week. He's got games online that folks can sign up and jump into and play, and he streams those guys. And lately he's been doing some one-offs on Thursday or Friday here along the way, because he's had that big Chain of Command game going for a while. Yeah, so ID Jester, I would do that, except that like my birthday falls into that window and I'm going to be unconscious. So
there you go.
Carl, we will definitely let you know which ones we want demoed for the next one. Let's figure out what's going to be released between now and then.
Excellent.
But for folks that are looking for some games to be able to play online, pop in over at the Dragoons. We got a lot of folks with a lot of experience doing tabletop simulator and Vassal kind of stuff. And again, we're broadcasting a bunch of them because Ozarski's streaming a lot of those things. But he's not the only one organizing those games. We got plenty of stuff that folks can find people to play with there.
Yeah, outstanding. Well, we're going to wrap it up here, and there's still a couple of events I think that are still going on, but we got to wrap it up here. And I want to appreciate everybody for stopping by and joining us today, enjoying the convention as well. And Brant, thanks for putting it all together. Ardwolf, thanks for hosting off the kickoff show and then your interviews as well. I think everybody has had a great time, and we're looking forward to the next one for sure. So keep your ears open.
Quick thought, Mo. We got 27 people watching and only 13 thumbs ups. And 2 of those are me. So some of y'all are just wrong, right? Go give the video a thumbs up. Help Mo get some visibility in the YouTube algorithms here.
There you go.
And then go pull up Gary's from Friday and do the same thing.
Absolutely. Always give thumbs up to the content creators, and it definitely helps us all, because I know we all do that for each other as well. So that's how you
want to stuff a ballot box. That's the ballot box to stuff.
that's a good point.
Sticking it to the man
on YouTube to give extra thumbs up.
But again, thanks everybody for joining us tonight, and thanks everybody for coming to the con, and we will see you all at the next one. Good night, everybody.
Thanks, guys.